And then I go, welcome to the Mindly.Social podcast with Joe and Jane. I'm Jane, and that's Joe. Hi, Joe.
And then I say, hi, Jane, how's it going?
And then everything goes really smoothly.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So, Joe, today I thought a really good subject for us to talk about, since it's something that's been on my mind, and I know it's something that's been on your mind, is anxiety.
Oh my God. I mean, yes, it is. How did you know?
Actually, I did a little bit of research, and did you know that anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the United States?
I mean, that makes sense, but I never actually knew that. So
Yeah, 40 million people suffer from anxiety disorders, which is 19% of the population. And of those 40 million, only 36.9% of them receive treatment for those anxiety disorders. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to be talking about disorders today, because there is a difference between anxiety and anxiety disorders.
Okay.
What I do want to talk about is anxiety in general, because I think that everybody suffers from anxiety at one point or another. And you and I have been talking a lot about the anxiety that you and I have been feeling. And I thought that it'd be a good conversation if we could bring in our audience and talk about the things that we've been feeling.
Okay, yeah, I really like that. I definitely agree that a lot of people have either experienced it or at least will experience it.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about how you and I have felt a little bit of anxiety even releasing this podcast.
It definitely produces anxiety just putting content out there, any kind of content, for me at least. So this podcast is a roller coaster of emotions for me.
Yeah, so usually when we're actually in the middle of the podcast, I'm feeling really good. I feel really like I could take on the world.
Yes.
And then when we're in the waiting period, when we're in the actual, like, the podcast is out there and people are listening to it, my stomach is in knots and I feel like I want to throw up.
I definitely know what you mean about that. Yeah. When you're in the, what's it called for airplanes, holding pattern?
The holding pattern.
And I think my therapist actually used that term once before too.
It's so tremendously stressful, especially when you don't know what people's reactions are going to be to the work that you're putting out there. And it's not even just necessarily the work that you're putting out there, because there's a little piece of you and me. There's little pieces of, like, our personal lives in here. And so it's almost like people are reacting to little pieces of us.
So for me, actually, it's not so much how other people react to it. I'm not really concerned about that. I used to be super concerned about, like, people judging me and, like, what they think about me. And that's no longer, like, a concern for me. I don't know why. It could be the medication I'm on. Just I no longer worry about that. My biggest concern is I kind of represent, like, Mindly.Social. And I'm worried that how I present myself on the podcast will reflect poorly on Mindly.Social or cause people to leave or cause people to go, hey, this isn't the kind of admin I want. You know, it is sort of like how I feel like people judge me, but at the same time, I think it's more of a reflection on how I present to the community. So that's where my anxiety comes from.
You have a completely different dynamic to this entire thing, because you're not even just thinking about this from a production level. You're thinking about this from, like, a leadership perspective.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to let people down. So I'm like, I do this all the time, even with my posts. I overthink my posts. I'll be sitting there and I'll be typing and I'll retype it like 4 or 5 times because I'm like, I'm the admin. I can't say dumb things or I can't be goofy or weird or anything like that, even though that's basically who I am. I kind of have that pressure that I put on myself.
How do you let that go?
That is a good question. A lot of times I basically just press the publish button and walk away and go, okay, it's there. It's out there.
That's hard. That is really hard, because then you have the anxiety that now that thing that you were anxious about in the first place is out there.
For me, once it's out there and it's done, I'm like, okay, it's out of my control now. I'm okay. I can live with this.
So the anxiety is just right up until that point of you've done it. It's done. It's out there. It's over with.
Yes.
And then you can live with it. My anxiety happens once it's out there, then my anxiety starts to grow. So we're kind of the opposite.
Yeah, so we're both okay in the moment when things are happening, but you're anxious after it's occurred. Yep. I'm anxious before it has occurred.
Which is terrible. We're terrible together.
I mean, actually, it works out because you go, hey, let's record now. If it was up to me, I would keep finding excuses or I would keep like pushing it off. So I'm glad there's somebody who goes, time to record. You were like, oh my God, what are they going to think? And I just go, I'm putting it out there. I don't care what they think.
That's fair.
So it complements, each other.
We do complement each other in that one of us does kind of take that role when the other one kind of wants to drop the ball. But it's okay because sometimes you have to have that kind of friend who pushes you through that anxiety. And I'm happy to be that friend who pushes you through that anxiety. And do you have other friends who push you through anxiety like
yes,
that?
I have quite a few. When I was going through therapy, that was one of the things I had to do was basically build a support group that helped me get through that stuff. Because as my therapist would always say, I was always in a loop.
Yeah.
Like I could never start things because I always wanted to start things, but I would just think about it too much. And so having somebody who can break that loop for me was really important.
I think that building that support group for anybody is really important. It's really hard when you don't have somebody there who's pushing you and telling you to do the things that you don't want to do, especially when those things that you don't want to do are really the things that are best for you.
Exactly, yeah.
And you know that they're the best things for you, but your anxiety is just too deep and too heavy for you to break through. Because how many times have we known that a decision that we just don't want to make is the right decision for us, but we really just don't want to make that decision?
Especially when it's like a defining decision or something, something critical, like life-changing events. Sometimes we have to make those choices and it's really hard to do.
It's so difficult, and yet we have to do it. So to have those support systems in place is really important. I think that's one of the reasons why Mindly.Social is such an important place right now, is because it's a really great tool to build a support system.
That's a really good observation, mainly because support systems require a lot of trust and a lot of faith in other people. And I think that Mindly.Social has that kind of community feeling of that, you know that they're not out to get you, that they're not out to hurt you. Like, you don't have to blindly trust them, but like, for example, if you're like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed today, you post that and there's usually people are like, hey, like sometimes we don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes we got to do it though. And just kind of that little interaction sometimes helps people get through it.
Those good faith approaches are so energizing in a way that can boost your mental health. So reaching out to people, even on the internet, is a really good way to build those support systems.
And a good example is I've seen regularly on Mindly.Social where people are like, hey, I'm going through a rough time. Does anybody have anything happy to say or any memes to share or, share your pets type thing? And I go to respond to it and they have, 5 comments already. I'm like, wow, that's really good. Like people have already stepped in before I could even get there.
Right. The energy is just so positive that it's contagious. Not only do you get that positive energy, but you want to be part of that positive energy too. So like when somebody says,
yes,
post your pets, you want to post your pet too. So it's like, it's a great energy. It's something fun. And it's something that I wanted to point out and make sure that everybody knew. If you have this anxiety or if you have these feelings of being overwhelmed, you're not the only one that feels that way. We feel that way too, a lot.
and because a lot of us are going through that, we don't judge people because they're going through that. It's very rare that I see people judge people for expressing how they feel or how they're thinking. Usually when they do, it's usually a troll and we get rid of them pretty quickly. It's nice that people are able to share those things and not have to basically suffer in silence.
That being said, if you are in a crisis, there is help available and you can reach out to the crisis helpline by dialing 988. So if anybody needed that, that is out there and available and ready. There are people out there who are willing and able to talk to you today.
Very nice.
Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about last week. We had a wonderful interview with Syl.
Yes, that was awesome.
It was an amazing interview.
Yeah.
She was really great. So I wanted to make sure that we invited anybody who wanted to come and talk with us. So if you wanted to come talk on the Mindly.Social podcast with me or Joe, you are always welcome to DM us.
You can reach out to me on Mindly.Social at Cujo. You can also email the podcast at podcast@mindly.social.
We do want to talk about some tough subjects, but we also want to talk about just anything in general. So if you want to talk to us, give us a ring, a ding.
Yeah, if you have a story to share about your experience on Mastodon as a whole, or specifically Mindly.Social, or even just
Dippin Dots.
Transitioning between Dippin Dots, of course, Dippin. We're going to have to bring up Dippin Dots in this episode, aren't we?
Well, Joe, This one time I visited Ocean City, Maryland, and there was Ocean City, Maryland is a big boardwalk,
Okay.
and on either side of the boardwalk is a Dippin Dots store.
How big is this
And
boardwalk?
it's a pretty big boardwalk.
So big that you'd finish your
And-
Dippin' Dots on one end and need it on the other end?
And I walked to the other end, and I got another thing of Dippin Dots, and then I would walk to the other end,
Oh.
and then I'd get another thing of Dippin Dots. And so my bank called me. They thought fraud was being committed because there was multiple Dippin Dot purchases. So they were like, are you sure that these Dippin Dots in Maryland are correct? Like, yes.
Don't judge me.
Please don't judge these $10 orders at Dippin Dots that I did 4 times.
Wow. I mean, I've had some weird fraudulent charges on my account before, but never
Dippin Dots.
What is our next topic? Do you have anything fun?
Our next topic is...
I mean, the previous topics were fun. I'm just saying, do we have anything else equally as fun?
equally as fun as anxiety.
And Dippin' Dots?
Oh, I was hoping to stretch anxiety out for half an hour, but apparently anxiety only takes me about 20 minutes to get through. So, I mean,
If only that was true. If only we can just all
anxiety has taken me 35 years, but it only took me 20 minutes to get through.
I guess we'll go back to anxiety because I have more to talk about with that.
Sure.
I always considered myself, I hate to use this term normal, but I used to not have any kind of social disorders or anything like that, or any kind of mental issues, I guess. Then the pandemic happened and everything just got crazy. And for some reason, I got the urge to contact a therapist. So I got this app on my phone that coordinates therapy sessions and stuff. So I scheduled that and I started talking to a therapist, and I even told them, I was like, I don't think I really need this, but I figured I'd do it just, as a baseline, just to make sure I'm doing okay. And then after a few sessions, I was like, wow, I have anxiety. And then after a few more sessions, my therapist was like, you should get tested for ADHD. I'm like, really? Why? I was like, that doesn't make sense. And then I go get tested, and sure enough, I have generalized anxiety and ADHD. I'm like, wow, I've been compensating my whole life basically with this. And once I did start taking medication for it, I was like, wow, my life is completely different now. My life would have been so much different if I did this sooner. It sucks that I waited so long. And this whole story is basically to put out there that even if you think that you don't need it, it does definitely help to just talk to somebody sometimes. Talking to a professional lets them have some insight into how you're feeling, and they can point out things that you don't recognize.
You never know what you're compensating for.
Yep.
It's so difficult to know what your baseline should be when you're living with anxiety or when you're living with a mental illness. I think we can both attest to that. And what is normal?
Yeah.
Anyways, there is no baseline for normal, I don't think. And people often think that there is, but there really isn't. So I spent a lot of my life trying to get to normal. And I think that was a mistake. I should have been trying to get to my normal versus just normal in general.
Earlier, when you had mentioned the stats of, what was it, 19% of people have anxiety disorders, I was like, that's a very low number. Because just talking to people, now that I've been diagnosed with it, I know what it looks like. I see it in people who have not been diagnosed with it. And I'm like, you really should talk to somebody, get tested, because there's a high probability you're suffering with this and you don't know it.
Right. And that's anxiety disorders. That's not anxiety in general.
Yes.
So, because I feel like everybody has anxiety.
Everybody gets anxious. Everybody gets nervous. Some people don't like flying on airplanes. Some people, before surgery, they get worried and stuff like that. But if you're just, sitting at work and all of a sudden you're getting worried about something that really shouldn't bother you, then that's kind of something you should look into.
Right. And obviously we're not professionals, so we want you to talk to somebody who is a professional if you do feel those feelings. And we want you to build that support system, and we want you to be happy.
And yes, the support system is definitely a critical part of anything, because when I was doing the therapy, I was like, I don't want to deal with medications. I don't want to take drugs to, alter how I feel and stuff like that. And so I was able to compensate for a while with the support system when I could talk through it with people. But then once I realized I did have ADHD, that's not something I could really talk through. So I did need to get medicated. And then because I had that support system, and I let people know, hey, this is what's going on right now. If my personality changes or whatever, this was going on. And everybody was, so supportive of it, for lack of a better word.
That's really good. That's really great.
And I was like really nervous at first when I was actually seeing a therapist. And then I had brought it up to a friend. He's like, yeah, me too. I go to a therapist every week. And then I brought it up in a Discord and everyone's like, yeah, we all have our own therapist. I was like, this is more normal than not having a therapist at this point. Like, why was I worried about going through this?
Yeah, I think everybody I know has a therapist at this point.
And even if it's not a therapist, like a doctor or somebody, a professional they talk to, even if it's not just, mental health doctor, like somebody they can speak with and go through these things with.
Therapists are a really great thing to have, and they're basically a member of your family.
Yes.
Did you want to do the toot of the week?
Yeah, let's jump into something happy. Yeah, toot of the week. Oh, my toot of the week is a little downer though, but yeah, let's go with it.
In that case, let's do the toot of the week.
You're cutting out a little bit there. Actually, can you do that again?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's the toot of the week.
There we go. That was perfect. We'll keep them both though, because that's fun.
Joe, what is your toot of the week?
My toot of the week comes from another user from Mindly.Social, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been looking at their username for like a month now, and I don't really know how to pronounce it, so I'm going to go with the best that I can. It's at Koala's Lament.
Okay.
I don't know what that means, but that's the username. And the toot is, it's okay, batteries. I've never included anything either.
Oh, that's the saddest toot I've ever heard.
I know. I was like, that's just like happy. Yeah, toot of the week. And then I'm like, oh, which one did I pick? Okay. A little downer, but I love this guy's toots. He does the best.
Well, my toot of the week comes from NS McKinnon at laserdisc.party, and it's Air Jordans imply the existence of water Jordans, earth Jordans, and fire Jordans. And they all come together and they build Captain Planet Jordans.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were going to do a Captain Planet joke or a Last Airbender joke.
It could have gone either way.
Oh man, look at the time. You don't have time for Henry Cavill. I'm sorry.
One day I will get him. He will be mine.
One day he's going to listen to this podcast and be like, wait, was I booked for this? What?
Yes, he was booked for the Mindly.Social podcast with a total of 37 listeners. Do we have 37 listeners?
I think we actually just crossed 200 listens.
And 199 of those were me.
And one of those was
Joe.
Boyfriend.
My boyfriend.
Yeah, let's give him a shout out because he's a listener now.
God, I forgot. My boyfriend listens to this podcast.
Hi, Jane's boyfriend.
I love you, but also stop listening to this podcast.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Have a good weekend. That's him singing.
Okay.
That's our theme song. Thank you for listening to the Mindly.Social podcast with Joe and Jane. The music of the Mindly.Social podcast is brought to you by Pixabay. The intro music is Energetic Hip Hop by Skillcell. The background music is Jazzy Abstract Beat by Coma Media. You can find us on Mastodon. Joe is at Mindly.Social /@Cujo. Jane is at Mindly.Social /@Janie. Thank you again and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.